All right, hi there. This is Dr. Matthew J. Traum. This is the first video of the fifth lecture of the engineering design course. As I've done in the past, I'll just quickly explain the way I set these videos up. I usually speak for about 7 minutes, which I found is just long enough to keep your attention. And then once 7 minutes is expired, I will pause, let you guys go take a break. Then when you're ready, come back and start the next video. And we'll continue doing that until we've exhausted all the slides in the lecture. So with no further ado, let's hop into lecture number 5. Okay, so in this lecture, we're going to talk about customer needs statements. And customer needs statements are essentially the foundation upon which the entire design process is based, because really the purpose of the design process is to come up with a solution that meets the customer needs. So it's pretty important to have these from a very early stage in the design process. So a customer needs statement is usually a mixture of both abstract and concrete objectives that whatever design that you come up with has to satisfy. So it's essentially a set of customer-defined criteria that your design solution must address. Unfortunately, in the real world, initially at least, customer needs are rarely expressed clearly or quantitatively. A lot of times the customer thinks they know what they want, but they can only articulate it in a, well, I'll know it when I see it type of way. It's usually pretty rare for a customer to be able to precisely describe what they want in terms of the needs for a particular outcome for a design project. Nonetheless, design is always driven by the customer needs. So the designer finds himself kind of in this weird bind in that you need to satisfy the customer needs, but the customer really typically has a very difficult time articulating what those needs are. The initial design process step is really to define the objectives based on the customer needs. And as I said, this is often pretty difficult because the customer can very rarely articulate the objectives in a clear way. So once you get customer needs, your next objective is to create a document which is a design objectives document. And this is a working document, meaning that it is like the design process in that it can be continuously changed and updated as you learn more about the problem. But the key feature of this design objectives document is that all of the stakeholders in the design process, at least for the most part, agree to it and agree to what's written in it. So your job as an engineering designer is essentially to take the initial customer needs statement and convert it into a design objectives document. So essentially to take something that's sort of poorly defined, the customer kind of knows it when they see it, but they can't really explain it or articulate it. It is something that's very quantitative and very measurable that can be used to compare and evaluate different possible design solutions. So how do you articulate design objectives in this design objectives document? Well, what you want is something that's pretty short, so it doesn't need to be this long, verbose, horrible thing. Just very short and very clear in its format towards articulating those design objectives, which again, of course, are based on what the customer needs. The purpose is to serve essentially as a visual way for all stakeholders in the design process to agree on the design objectives. Now remember, you guys, you're taking this course, you're engineers, so engineers typically are very quantitative, very visual. We have a very distinct way of thinking about problems and solutions to problems, whereas our customers might not necessarily be technical people. And so what we need is a design objectives document that is both understandable to an engineering mindset and to the client or the customer who may not necessarily be a technical person. This design objectives document can and often does include the general means under consideration for achieving each of those objectives, and I'm going to talk to that a little bit more in slides coming up here. One thing that it does do is it shows the ways in which the various objectives relate to each other, and as we'll discuss in the next coming slides, there are certain objectives that are very, very important, that are sort of critical level 1 objectives, and then a lot of those objectives are spoken to by less important, say level 2 or level 3 objectives. But part of this design objectives document that you guys will create from the customer needs statement, part of what it does is show the relationships between those really important objectives and then the slightly less important objectives. And then finally, where do you get all of the content that goes into this design objectives document? Well, some of it comes directly from the customer needs statement. So the customer is going to tell you something, hopefully, about what it is that they want you to do, what problem they want you to solve, and what form they think that that solution should take. So some of this content does come from the customer needs statement. Typically, more content comes from interviewing or speaking with the client or the customer. So actually conducting interviews, both of the people who ultimately are going to manufacture this thing and sell it, and potentially the people who are ultimately going to use it, the end user, right, which might be two separate groups of people. So a lot of this process converting a customer needs statement into a design objectives document involves interpersonal interactions with the clients, the customers, or the end users to try to tease out exactly what the design objectives are. So that's something that sometimes engineers don't have a lot of interpersonal skills, and that's something that's a little bit challenging, but it's something as engineering designers that you're going to have to get used to doing. Okay, I've just hit 7 minutes, and so I'm on one of my favorite slides. This is the I want to sit slide. So I will pause here, and we will start again after your break. So see you back here in just a few moments.